Hello everybody and welcome to my live stream. I'm getting better at this. I had used a scheduled live stream and a countdown and some music and all that stuff. So let me go ahead and get my PowerPoint ready because today I'm going to do a PowerPoint. Come on, do a PowerPoint and talk a little bit about my car racing hobby and make fun of generative AI, and I'll talk about that for about 30 or 35 minutes, and then we'll just go into questions and answers, whatever questions and answers that you find interesting. Let me go ahead and get this chat to pop out. Can I pop the chat out? Pop out chat. There we go. Make that a little bigger. There we go. Yeah, I'm using the music from my thing. So let me go ahead and switch to my screen. I think I can get my little split screen guy in there as well. There we go. So hello. And like I said, I'm going to talk for about 35 minutes. I really like this format because I have all these talks that it would be great if I could get invited to give a talk. But then I don't get invited, and so away we go. So today I want to talk about my car racing hobby, and at the end talk a little bit about generative AI, and mostly make fun of generative AI. That'll be a theme of mine. I love generative AI, but I think everyone's got to take it down a notch. And so here is a general outline of my talk. So I race in a racing series called the 24 Hours of Lemons, and I'll talk a little bit about the 24 Hours of Lemons. I'll talk about the racetrack I race at, the cars that I've built and raced, and some results, and invite you to come and visit me at the racetrack. You can find out where I'm going to be. I'll be in Chicago at Joliet, like July 12th-ish. You can go look at the 24 Hours of Lemons. So it's kind of cool and kind of ironic, and you will, a metronome is running in the background. Oh, okay, I'll fix the metronome. There goes your metronome. Okay, that's a fan. And so it's an interesting time right now. Because this past weekend, like 2 days ago, 48 hours ago, the 24 Hours of Le Mans finished. And for the second time in a row, Ferrari won. Ferrari has won a lot. And you'll see that in my racing career, I'm a little obsessed with the movie Ford versus Ferrari. I'm not just a Ferrari nut. But I'm interested in the movie Ford versus Ferrari, and you'll see that. As a matter of fact, the current car that I'm racing, we call it the Ferarri. And the Ferarri is a Ford Mustang that I have customized to the point where it looks as much like a Ferrari as I can make it. And so that's what this is. And so I put a lot of time, bought a lot of stickers, and I'm imitating the 1967 330 P3, and here is a picture of a $15,000 model. I don't have the $15,000 model. It is the race car number 21 that Ferrari raced in. Lorenzo Bandini raced, and he DNF'd. He didn't finish. It's in the movie Ford versus Ferrari. On the back stretch, he pushed it too high, and I think he launched his transmission. And so it was the highest finishing Ferrari in the 1966 Le Mans, which is this number 21. And that's the car that I am imitating in my building, because one of the things in the 24 Hours of Lemons that is important is what your car looks like. So this is a racing series that is the largest racing series in the world, meaning the number of cars, the number of races, the number of people involved in it is the largest racing series in the world. And part of it has to do with the fact that it is not about competitive. There's a lot of competitive races out there. SCCA, Spec Miata, all these folks that like think they're really a real live racer, and so think they're a real live racer, and they're just weekend warriors. And so what the 24 Hours of Lemons did is said, how about we just let people be weekend warriors without pretending to be racers? And the problem is that if you've ever really raced, and I never have really raced, I've been on a track with people who think they're really racing. I've also ridden dirt bikes, and I've ridden dirt bikes in a way that I was with people who thought they were racing as well. And this is what I learned, and that is, if you're truly racing, and everyone is an equivalently prepared vehicle or a very close vehicle, the person who takes the most risk and is smart and skilled at dealing with large amounts of risk is most likely going to be successful. So someone who, like, you're going to a turn, two cars are going into the turn, the car that brakes last is going to win. And but then you're taking the safety margin of braking at the right time. You brake later and hope the other guy brakes at the right time, and you hope that you somehow find your way around the turn. And so that you do that in a competitive race over and over and over. And the craziest people are the ones that tend to win, the people that risk their car getting crashed or crunched, because it's kind of like chicken. Every turn in a real race is like chicken. Lemons is exactly the opposite. In Lemons, there are lots of cars. Some are faster than you, some are slower than you. The ones that are faster than you, they're going to pass you sooner or later, so you might as well let them by. And the ones that are slower than you, you're going to eventually catch up with them, and you're going to be behind them, and they're going to see you, and they're going to like, well, here comes this car behind me, and I might as well let you pass. So in our racing, we get passed by probably 2/3 or more of the cars, and we pass 1/3 of the cars. And so it's fun enough. And what's really cool for me, one of the things I love about racing, if you ever watch some of my racing videos, what's cool for me in that is it is like, because there's so many cars faster than me, I get to see really good drivers, and I get to see them on the track. I'm in the car, and I'm watching the technique and the car preparation and the handling and the acceleration. I get to be a spectator to an amazing race with amazingly talented racers with amazingly skilled cars. And they go by me all the time, and I'm like, cool technique, cool technique, cool technique. Yeah, your car's faster than me. What are you proving? So, and then every once in a while, I'll catch up with a car that's slower than me, and then I'll be the guy. I don't want to be the slowest car on the track, and I also don't want to be the fastest car on the track. And so Lemons has a series of rules that basically say, if you touch another car, no matter whose fault it was, both cars have to come off. Any contact. If you sneak your wheels off the track to get a tiny advantage, and racers do this all the time, you come off. And if you do it badly enough, they will sit you, and you'll have to just sit the rest of the race. So you kind of get punished in timeout. You get black flag to get pulled off, and then you get a timeout. First timeout's pretty quick. Second timeout's a little longer. Like third time in a day, because we race for 12 hours a day. We get started at, well, it's not 12 hours, it's more like 9 hours, but we start in the morning and end in the evening. And if you make a mistake more than 3 times, you're taken out for that day. And it's all about safety, because they want the good drivers and the bad drivers to be able to be on the track together in a safe way. And if you are sort of zooming around and trying to stop someone from passing you, which again in competitive racing happens, that's going to hurt somebody. It's going to dent a car. These cars are supposed to be $500, but they're not. They're not. And so if you spent like $8,000 to build a race car, most of my race cars are somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000 to build. You do not want to get it dented, and you just want to go with your, it's a team thing because it's an endurance race. So you want to go with like your 4 friends and some family members and sit around and get your turn to drive and keep track and watch on your phone who's doing well and what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong, and then go home. No one gets hurt. No cars get hurt. Cars do get hurt, but it's very, very safe. We have roll cages in every car. The safety inspection is extremely serious. We overbuild these cars for the speeds and the amount of contact that we're going to get. There's probably about, out of 20 races, average 100 cars a race, there's probably 3 rollovers a year and nobody gets hurt. If you roll a car over, you get kicked out for a year. That's how serious they are about safety. So that's 24 Hours of Lemons, and I wouldn't race if I couldn't find a fun, respectful, decent. At the end of the first day, which is a Saturday night, we have a potluck at 6. The race stops at 5, and then we have a potluck at 6. And everyone from all the racing teams just sits around and talks and drinks beer if they like that kind of stuff. So it is a very supportive and friendly and just plain fun, because you just don't want to go to a racetrack by yourself and go round and round in circles. You need some other cars to pass you and pass them to feel like you're really racing, and that's what's fun about the 24 Hours of Lemons. So this is where I race. It's called Gingerman Raceway. I've raced this is South Haven, Michigan, which is about 2 hours from my home in mid-Michigan. We have raced at Pittsburgh. We have raced at Joliet, Illinois. We've raced at Wisconsin up by Green Bay at Road America track. We went to Kansas once. That was a 16-hour drive. Never again. You know, we got within 2 to 5 hours is the kind of drive we want to go to a racetrack, because it takes a whole weekend. You show up on Thursday night and you leave Sunday night. And so this is my track. You can see the start-finish line is in the center of it. Then we go turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, turn 7, 8, 9, 10. Then the back straight where we go really fast. And you can see me if you watch any of my online driving. You get to know this track after a while. Although I'll say that until I was actually on the track, I could watch all these videos and I never knew where I was on the track. Although my videos have a little kind of bug that tracks around on it, so you can kind of see it. In terms of the speeds for us are anywhere from a high of 100 miles an hour at the end of the back straight, to a low of about 35 miles an hour going around a really tight turn. And so you can think of this race as 9 hours, 1,000 miles, where you are accelerating as fast as you can for about 8 seconds, and then you're slamming on the brakes, then you're making a turn, squealing the tires, accelerate for 3 to 8 seconds, slam on the brakes, turn. So it's fun. You're strapped into a racing seat. You got these harnesses. Your head's all safe, and it's amazing feeling. It's almost like you're suspended in air in a properly installed racing seat with properly installed racing harness and properly installed helmet and the Hans device that stabilizes your head, because you don't have a airbag in a race car, so you have this thing that holds onto your head to make sure you don't hurt yourself. Safety, safety, safety. So that track has 10 turns. It is a little over 2 miles. We do anywhere from, I do about somewhere between 2 minute and 3 second to 2 minute and 8 second laps. Our better drivers can get down to 1:55. The track record is like under 140, like 137 or something like that. We're nowhere near that. I don't build super fast cars. I build cars for fun. So let's talk about some of the race cars that I've built over the years. So I got started in 2016. They have a thing in Lemons called the Arrive and Drive. I should have had some pictures of that, where somebody else has a car and you pay them money and you get to drive around in their car. So I did this Arrive and Drive. Well, let me see if I can make this happen. I'll show you. a picture of my first arrive and drive. Okay, so here we go. So this is my first actual experience with a friend of mine, Brad Carter, and he had a Neon, and I paid him like $600 and rented a suit, and that was his little Neon called Doobie's Taxiola, which is from the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And so that's his brother, that's his trailer, that's me in a rented racing suit and a rented helmet. You can see in my eyes that I'm very afraid because I like car racing and I'm like about to get in a car and go racing, but I'd never done it before. And so you can see I'm a little bit nervous. It was raining and wet. I was staying there. They have a spare engine. There's their dog. And there's the car, Doobie's Taxiola, on the track. We're doing a pit where we're changing I'm adding gas to it. So that was my first experience, and at some point they shut the track down for too much rain. There I am. So that was my first experience, was 2016, and that was a great team. Brad runs a great team, and after that I decided I needed to have my own race car. So my brother found on Craigslist this 1990 Nissan Stanza. And it was already a race car, and it was already decorated, and it was decorated in the decoration of I think it might be 90s animated thing called Venture Brothers. And Venture Brothers was this animated cartoon that was just kind of tongue-in-cheek, and they were these bad guys that were these bugs, and so we had this car that had all these logos of this Venture Brother thing. And then I made costumes, because a big part of Lemons is cool costumes. So I made these costumes. I handcrafted these costumes out of plastic and bought all this stuff and made these shirts and bought these costumes from. And there we are wearing the costumes. You can see in the lower left that my son Brent is in here. He's wearing what's called a cool suit. It's basically a water-based air conditioner for your body on really, really hot days. And so he's standing by the car. He's standing by the car, experiencing on a very hot day what it's like when you pump ice water through these little things that are on your chest, right? There's tubes in your chest, and there's a pump and ice in the back of the car, and it pumps through your body. That car was fun. It got us into racing. But it was like all was breaking. And so I wanted another car. And I wanted a car that looked like, right, you can kind of see it here. I wanted a car that looked like the Sakaiger, which is our, let's go back to this. Okay. I wanted a car that looked like the Sakaiger, who is the mascot of my open source Sakai project. And so I wanted a Sakai car. And so I figured a Dodge Neon, and I had driven a Dodge Neon, the Doobie's Taxiola, and loved driving that car. In the 90s, early 2000s, Dodge Neons were the it car of small front-wheel drive racing. They were just the car, and they were the coolest car. And they were light, and they were performant. Having spent a lot of time underneath them, they have beautiful suspension. The back of them looks like a mini, the rear suspension on a Neon looks like a mini F1. It's just awesome. And so I decorated the Dodge Neon with all the things to make it look like a Sakaiger who has these little things on the side of their face. And so I made the thing have ears, which my brother never liked because he thought it was bad for aerodynamics. And I'm like, well, sorry, I don't care because I want it for marketing. And so we built this Neon. My brother Scott is my crew chief and chief mechanic. And so he kind of built this car in his garage and kind of cleaned up the suspension and replaced the brakes. You always put better brakes in race cars because braking is more important than going fast. And he built up the engine and he did a lot of stuff. And we put a lot of time in this car. You can see the logos on the car, Python Anywhere, School of Information, University of Michigan, Coursera, edX, Learner Privacy, Sakai, Sugi, all my things are there. Um, and so, and I made matching helmets, and I even commissioned a 3D print of a Sakai. And so that was a fun car. Neons are also hard to keep running. And so we spent a lot of time working on this Neon and keeping it running. But true to form, I built a series of costumes where we had these Sakaigers. I went to this place that does cosplay. This place that has cosplay, and they do cosplay outfits, and I got custom made Sakaiger shirts and leggings, and so we could walk around with Sakaiger shirts and leggings, and again, costuming the car and costuming the people is a kind of critical part of the 24 Hours of Lemons, and that is it creates a air of frivolity to break the tension that would otherwise be there if this was an air of being a serious racer. And so by walking around with furry ears, you are ensuring that it feels accessible to other people, and it makes it so that the good racers don't intimidate the racers who are just starting out. And so that was my cute little car, a beautiful car. I marketed. I got this T-shirt made, got all kinds of things made, and just loved that car to death. The problem is that Neons are unreliable, and so we had trouble getting any car to finish a race. We're way smarter now than we were. First off, don't start with a Neon. That's your first lesson, is don't use a Neon because it's just going to break. It's kind of like don't use Kubernetes if you're doing online stuff. Because all that's going to happen if you use Kubernetes is you're going to be disappointed. So in this picture, you see us building what we'd call Neon 2. And so we have a friend, Doc, and that's his daughter, Nita. In there, he has a shop, and they spent a winter just tearing apart. So Doc and Nita did most of the building on Neon 2. Scott did a lot of the work, but Doc and Nita sort of tore it out and kind of figured a bunch of things out. And when you build a race car, you got to tear the interior out, but you got to make sure you don't break anything. And then you got to put a new interior back in, and then you got to put racing seats in and racing harnesses and a roll cage and all that stuff. And so the idea is we would have two identically looking Neons, Neon 1 and Neon 2, and then if Neon 1 would crap out, we would just like, here's Neon 2. And so I was even going to have like a little rented garage at the racetrack where I would keep my spare Neon in the garage. Neon 1 was a better prepared car than Neon 2 was, and Neon 1 was a little sportier. Neon 2 was a little more conservative, and in endurance racing, if you make your car too sporty, it tends to eat itself up. And so the idea was to make Neon 2 a more reliable car. And so the Neon 2 would always work, and I think we might have finished one race in Neon 2, started and finished. Neon 2 unfortunately got in an accident in Kansas City. We put a brand new driver in. We learned that lesson. Just because someone sounds cool doesn't mean they know how to drive a race car. My whole family, all my brothers and my nephews, all rode dirt bikes throughout our youth. I still have a dirt bike. And you know, you ride dirt bikes, and you kind of you learn about like sliding, and you learn about leaning, and you learn about steering when it starts to slide, and all that stuff. And you just assume that everybody had the same experience, lived life experience as you. And so someone talks a good talk, and they seem to know things about plugs and wires and stuff. So you put them in the car, and they just he made one lap and then T-boned it right into a concrete barrier. And Neon 2 was never the same ever since. And we went back to Neon 1. We kind of rebent Neon 2 a little bit, kind of put it back in, but away you go. So, So what happened is we sat down one point in time and we said, like, okay, we are not happy with Neons. we just can't. We are getting halfway through a race, and something's going wrong, and we got to pull the car in, and we got to start fixing the car, take it to weld something or whatever. And we were like, I want a car that just is going to work. I don't want it to be fast. I want it to be boring. And so we sat around and talked to some people and came up with a notion of a Ford Mustang. And that Ford Mustang wanted to be between the years 2005 and 2009. And so it was, I'll jump ahead here. It was the first Mustang. There's the original Mustang style, and then there was a whole series of Mustangs that were kind of square and boxy. And this 2005 Mustang was the first Mustang that looked like the original. And it had a V6 in it, and I didn't want a super powered car. And I also had become obsessed with the Ford versus Ferrari movie, the 1966 Le Mans. And so I thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool to take a black Mustang and prepare it to look like a Ford GT40 from Ford versus Ferrari in the 1966 24 Hours of Le Mans. So we built up a race car. My brother Scott. He's working on some really expensive disc brakes and disc rotors and disc cooling, and that's the kind of stuff you do to race cars, is just kind of find a way to take it. And it's not, I didn't put a bigger engine in it, but I sure put better brakes on it. And you can see like the Coursera logo and the Sakai logo and the School of Information logo and the Electronic Freedom Foundation logo as well. And that was our Mustang. And so that we finished that probably 3 years ago, and we raced that, and it really was a great car. You could drive it. It has a V6. It's got 200 horsepower. It's not overpowered. It is very neutral, stable. It was our first rear-wheel drive car, and like the first time if you've been driving front-wheel drive cars for racing and then you switch to rear-wheel drive cars, you're like, whoa, because front-wheel drive cars are both powering and steering, and so you're skidding your tires and turning them, and all the stuff in the front-wheel drive just gets torn up, and it just doesn't last very long. Really good racers who race front-wheel drive cars tend to change their constant CV joints almost every race, sometimes every night. And so we wanted to go to the rear-wheel drive car. You don't destroy bearings, you don't destroy this, it just works. You're driving the rear wheels, steering the front wheels, and you're not both driving and steering with the same wheels. And it just goes around turns way more neutral with a rear-wheel drive car. And so we prepared that car, and you can see that I kind of like put little silly hood scoops on, painted the wheels gold, put spinners on them, and tried as best we could to emulate the Ford GT40. And we've been running that car for about 3 years now, and I love the heck out of that car. We call that Black Mustang. But then we're still not done. To continue the Ford versus Ferrari thing, I wanted 2 Mustangs. And not because the Mustangs were so unreliable, but I might want to have one Mustang in the shop being worked on, like a whole new engine or something. So I need a second Mustang. And so I decided to make the second Mustang be a red car and to imitate the number 21 in the 1966 Le Mans, the 330 P3, which is, many people say, is the most beautiful car ever built. And so you'll notice that I have the logos and went and found historically accurate stickers and all that stuff, and I like put fake fins on it the way the Ferrari has cooling fins. You'll see that my car has a Shell logo, a Shell oil logo on the door, and the Le Mans one has just a yellow circle, and that's because Ferrari was sponsored by Shell, but they couldn't put logos that were not approved by, that were not also sponsoring Le Mans or something. So Ferrari put a white circle on to exactly where the Shell would go, so people would be like, oh, that's just the Shell logo. But that if you look at this other races, you see Shell logos in those other races. But so I put the Shell logo in, and so I put scoops on it and put a wing on the back of it and tried my best to make a fake Ferrari. It's a pretty car. They're all my race cars are road legal. They have turn signals, and they even have like defrosters in them because sometimes you're driving and it's raining, and so these cars are quite roadable. They've got racing seats in it and a roll cage, but other than that, they're pretty roadable. And I've driven many thousands of miles in these race cars on the road, and I don't race on the road. I don't have to. I have a racetrack to race, and so the driving them on the road, I've had police pull up next to me, and they just look at it and go, okay, here's this nerd with a bunch of numbers on his car. He's not making any trouble. He's not going through stop signs. He's not doing donuts. And so driving these cars on the road for me has never, ever, ever been a problem. So these are some of the results. I apologize for the names of the other cars. Most races have about 100 to 120 cars, and the key thing is to finish, to finish and to keep racing, and to race as much as you can. It's just like Le Mans. It's who goes the farthest distance in a certain amount of time. And so our car historically, like if you look at these, you can't read these, but we see like in the one where we came in 26th place out of 100 racers, I think. Our best time was just 2 minutes, and the most recent time was 2 minutes 26 seconds. But you see a lot of other cars doing like 150s, minute 50, minute 52, and we're doing really, really well for the speed that we get. And so we tend to be slow and finish well. And so like if you look at the other one where we came in 19th, did 361 laps. The last lap was 2 minutes and 6 seconds. That could have been me driving, because 2 minutes and 6 is a typical race time for me. But the best time is 1 minute and 56. So one of our drivers drove 10 seconds faster than me in a lap. But that's part of racing, is you can't stress yourself. You can't just terrify yourself by living on the edge all the time. So sooner or later you got to put laps in and not destroy the driver. Now, Lemons events are open to the public. My next Lemons event is the 12th of July in Joliet, Illinois. If you live in the Illinois region or near Chicago, you can buy a $20 ticket, and it's basically an all access. You can find us, you can find me, you can talk to me. Several times at racetracks, people are like, wait a sec, you're my Python teacher. And so I turned it into an office hours. And so this is a fellow he's actually from the Chicago area. I think he works at Fermilab, or maybe another guy works at Fermilab. But he was hearing my voice, and he's like, you sound familiar to me. And so we made a little video. You're welcome to come and visit at a race, and maybe we'll make a video. And so now I want to transition to kind of a funny bit. I'm always trying to think of funny ways to explain generative AI. So this is racing and generative AI. So the Ferarri, the red Mustang, made its debut in May, just 2 months ago, at Gingerman and in South Haven. And so it was great. We'd prepared it. We've been working on it for well over a year, preparing it. Past tech, it's going, it's running. We've got thousands and thousands, 2,000 to 3,000 miles of road time on it. We have track time. We have practice days. We go to practice days. And this car felt really super solid. And it just runs like a dream in some ways. It's just a dream car. It just runs so smooth. My black Mustang has like 180,000 miles on it, and this car has like 120,000 miles on it. So it just is a smoother car than the black Mustang. This is also a 2009 and not a 2005. And so first day, which is like 9 hours of racing, It ran great, and it was just perfect. And it was like, there we go. It's gonna be fine. Now, we had brought the other black Mustang as a spare in case something went wrong. And so I'd finished the day. It went great, and then we go to dinner. And so I drove the car to dinner because it needed to get gas filled up. So I just drove it to dinner. And coming back from dinner, all of a sudden, it would start blubbering. You'd put a little gas into it and go, bub, 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 bub. And then you even get more gas, it bubber more. It would only run well up to about 2,500 RPMs. As soon as you got above 2,500 RPMs, it would blubber at all throttle positions. And we hadn't done anything. We hadn't even put new gas in yet. Everyone's like, you got bad gas. And the answer is, well, no, that was the gas we'd been racing on because I hadn't filled it up. I filled it up after it was blubbering. And so it's like, what in the heck is going on? And we just kind of decided at that point to switch to the black car. And so the next morning we finished the race in the black car. And that's why we bring two cars, is so that we finish the race in the black car. And so we get the car home. It's still running. We didn't drive it home. We took it home in a trailer and drove the black car home. And so I was like, I've always been fascinated. I'm always looking for examples of how I can learn more about GenAI. And so I asked ChatGPT a question. And the question is, I have a 2009 Mustang that blubbers at medium RPMs under moderate throttle. What might be wrong? And so it says, blubbering at medium RPMs could be caused by lots of issues. Here's some: fuel delivery, fuel pump, fuel filter, fuel injectors. Dirty or malfunctioning injectors might not deliver fuel properly. Ignition system problems, spark plugs, ignition coils, spark plug wires, air filter, mass airflow sensor. And it goes on. And it's sort of just answering my question about sensors, throttle position sensor, oxygen sensors. The ECU might be wrong. Mechanical issues like compression problems or timing, like you blew a head gasket. So this is kind of interesting because if you look at ChatGPT, I had a conversation with ChatGPT. It's like I'm talking to a person. And so that's one of the things that's cool about GenAI, is for us to do investigation. GenAI is a large language model, which means when you say I have a 2009 Mustang that blubbers at medium RPMs, it has parsed the words and turned them into meaning. And it understands what you said, and then it tries to match in all the other things that it's read and understood, the kinds of things that might be most helpful. So it's trying to make a connection between the concepts in your question. How it reads your question is like completely distinct and different. To me, that's half of the glory of GenAI, is the fact that you speak to it in your language and you give it complete sentences, and you can have a follow-on conversation to get some clarification. And it's thinking about this from a concept perspective, not a word perspective. And the other thing that's cool about this is that it's giving you an answer. It's not just giving you resources, it's giving you an answer. It may or may not be the right answer. It could be wrong, but it's the best answer that it can come up with, given what you have told it, how it understands what you said, and what it knows about the problem space that you're asking. So let's compare and contrast this with asking the same question to Google. I have a 2009 Mustang that blubbers at medium RPMs under moderate throttle. Now, Google is looking at this much more as a series of words, right? It's not trying to say, what is he really talking about? It's like, what did he say? Which is different than what's the concept behind what he's trying to say. And so it finds a few things, right? And so what Google really wants to do is it doesn't really want to answer your question. It doesn't care about your question. It wants to present to you websites that might answer your question. And to some degree, and I have written a search engine, to some degree, it has a sense of what the most likely websites to answer your question are and less likely websites. And so you imagine that there are billions of websites, and Google is like, what out of the billion, give me the 1,000 most likely ones. Now it turns out that it doesn't work well if you do a search engine and it gives you the 1,000 most likely sites with the answer. And here's the problem. If you rank from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those are going to look very similar because the algorithm it's using to figure out which pages are relevant is going to find pages that are almost identical. Like forum posts is what it's finding here in Google. It's finding forum posts. And so it turns out it can't just give you the 45 best ones. It actually has to give you a few of the best ones and then mix it in with some not so great ones, because it has to hope. If it gives you all things that are the same, you're like, look, you don't really know anything. But if it randomly mixes up these results and gives you high likelihood results and low likelihood results, if it's not right in how it calculated high likelihood, then it has a chance of making you happy. So to some degree, you can think of a Google search as you give it some words and it gives you back a list of things, and some of it Google just barely thinks it's close. It's thrown against the wall to see if you like it. And then what it's really doing, and how Google has become really good, is if you like the third thing and you click on it, and someone else likes the third thing with a very similar question and clicks on it, pretty soon the third thing becomes the first thing. So our behavior, how we click on these links, informs Google way more than the words. Now compare and contrast that with GenAI. GenAI took exactly your sentence, parsed it, understood it, took thousands of other documents, millions of other documents that it also had parsed, and did a concept map and gave you one answer. So that's why, I can make fun of GenAI, but if we start thinking about GenAI as unlike Google, we can actually have a conversation with GenAI, meaning that the language you're using is helpful to it, not, like blubbers. What is Google going to think about the word blubbers? Am I really interested in whales, or historic whale harvesting and resources like blubbers? And so I didn't get this. But if you were to go do this in a Google and you go farther and farther down, what you would find is that sooner or later Google just starts throwing crap at you. Just scroll farther down. The next thing you know, it's talking about a cold air intake for a Mustang for sale. Just hoping that all it wants you to do is say something, scroll down and click on something, because then it feels like it's made you happy. And even if what you finally find your way is the Ford versus Ferrari movie, when you say, I have a 2000 Mustang that blubbers, and then you go off and watch a clip from Ford versus Ferrari, it's done what it thinks it wants you. Whatever it is, it's satisfied you. And you feel like Google has done something for you. So that's a complete difference between ChatGPT and Google. And if I was at Google, I would be very, very worried, because it's just going to be hard for them. ChatGPT has low expectations. Google has high expectations. So that's part, just saying Google is ChatGPT, that's not necessarily going to work, because we have too much trust in Google. But we're trusting Google to give things for us to decide on, not making decisions for us. So that's going to be tough for Google. So armed with this, and you can't read this, but armed with this information from ChatGPT, because we're back home at this point, I sent a note to my brother Scott, who's our chief mechanic. I said, hey Scott, I asked a question of ChatGPT about a Mustang V6. And then I just cut and pasted the whole response of ChatGPT. Just pasted it in. And it just said, like, what do you think? Right? And he's very good. He's like, Mustang GPT right now, because he's worked on Mustangs, and he's Neon GPT, and he's General Motors 3.8 liter engine GPT. And so almost instantly he sent me this reply back. He said, ironically, this is what I've already purchased and it's already being shipped to me and I'm going to install. mass airflow sensor, oxygen sensor, spark plugs, spark plug wires, fuel and air, fuel pump assembly. So basically, he and ChatGPT reached the same conclusion. And his theory was, once he gets the car apart, you might as well put a whole bunch of new parts in and see what's wrong. Okay? And so there he was. You know, he and ChatGPT, I mean, he had already ordered all the parts that ChatGPT would have told him to order. I guess I could have asked, hey, ChatGPT, where should I order these parts from? Wait a second. Let me see if I can make that. Let me see if I can figure that out. Come on. Let me see if I can get to ChatGPT quick enough. Probably not. Let's see if I can log into ChatGPT. Okay, let me bring this up. So I'm in the middle of a conversation, right? And I can ask ChatGPT. I have not done this. Where is a good place to mail order the necessary parts? Now I know that my brother would have the answer to this question. Let's see what it knows. Nope. First answer, Rock Auto. So if you're a car person, Summit Racing, we buy stuff from that, and American Muscle. CJ, wait a sec. Those are all Advance Auto. These are all places we buy stuff. But the first one is the right one, and that's Rock Auto. And so, again, you can see that ChatGPT is conceiving of what my concept is, what I'm trying to accomplish, right? I mean, it's great. So, okay, so thank you, ChatGPT, for that sort of like little tiny... And so ChatGPT and my brother kind of agree where to buy the parts. Got to buy a bunch of parts. Let's do a lot of changing. And then about a couple of days later, Scott sent me a note. And in that note, he said... it was none of those things. Let me see if I can show you this. Oh shoot, I didn't have that thing up for a while. Crap, I didn't have that up. There's Scott's message to me. I need to have a switcher in my office. So let me see if I can show you. I got another camera here. Look at this. This is my handheld camera. I'm going to turn this handheld camera on. I want it to be able to live stream with a handheld camera. Let's see if it's working. Come on, camera. Is it working? Camera. It worked before. Camera 8. It was working. Oh, dang it all. I was going to show you like this camera, but it's not coming up right. Oh, I know why. Oh, here it is. It's upright. Okay, hang on. It finally woke up. Okay, let's take camera 8. There you are. It's camera 8. You can kind of see my setup, right? There's your chat right there. You can see the thing I'm sharing. That's the screen. Hey, and there's the Sakaiger. Hello, Sakaiger. This is my office view. That's how I switch it. How I'm watching. You can see the audio stuff, so that's how it's going. Okay, there's my switcher, there's my laptop, here's my coffee. Okay, so here we go. Now I can show you what's going on here. So these are spark plug wires, right? Okay, let's zoom in and out here. Spark plug wires. Okay, these are spark plug wires. This is a normal spark plug wire. This is an abnormal spark plug wire. And so what it is you can see that the insulation of the abnormal spark plug wire was eaten, and some of the insulation on that is eaten. You can see that parts are eaten and not eaten. Okay, so let's go back. See, my cool camera worked. I'll put that over here. Okay, my cool remote. I wanted to be able to take that into the garage and live stream working on the car. So I'm still working up to that in my streaming. So the problem with these things, now that I've shown you a close-up version of it, is that this spark plug wire was by the battery. And it turns out that there are two kinds of batteries in this world, 12-volt batteries. One is a regular, traditional, liquid-filled battery that's acid, sulfuric acid. And the other is what's called an AGM battery. It's got a something glass mat, absorbed glass mat. I think it's absorbed glass mat. And you're supposed to, in a race car, you're supposed to use an AGM battery because then you don't have acid sloshing around. Or if you have an accident and it blows up and you get acid spraying all over the place, that's not good, right? Because you can break a battery in an accident. So you're supposed to have an AGM battery in the car. And so we did not have an AGM battery in the car. And so the battery is like here, and this plug wire was here. There was only one plug wire close to the battery. And in right turns, the centrifugal force would slosh the fluid out of the battery onto this thing. And it basically ate the edge off. And here's the thing. It ate it and ate it and ate it. And eventually, while we were at dinner, it ate through enough so that the electricity would arc right out of this thing. And so Scott didn't guess it. ChatGPT didn't guess it, that we had the wrong battery. But Scott, who is a ChatGPT that started working on a car, and he sees this and he goes like, oh, that's what it is. And then he looks at the battery and like, we didn't switch the battery. So he screwed, ooh, that's kind of a mess. Let me put this back in a box. So there you go. So there's the lesson in it all, right? The lesson in it all is that somebody looking at the problem straight at it has more information than either an expert on email or an expert ChatGPT. And it wasn't like Scott on email and ChatGPT were wrong. It's just they weren't right. And the whole thing of like, oh, wow, it's the battery, and we put the wrong battery in. You just wouldn't expect that. So there we go, the ChatGPT. Let me go back to this. Yeah. And so if you look, there's a picture with the two cables that I just showed you. And so there is the lesson. So that's all I wanted to share with you. Thank you for sharing the hobby, and I will stop sharing my screen, and I will switch to looking at your questions and turn this into ask me anything you want. I don't know how many people we have. We're going to use this both in live and recording, but for the recording, the recording that we're going to put out on a podcast, we'll stop that right now. Okay, so yeah, I didn't see the answer coming either. Okay, so let's go back to this, and let me move this to a larger screen so I can watch your chats. There we go. Okay, so I don't know how many we've got. Good morning from Fort and Dearborn. Oh, hey, Jay, nice to meet you. How many countries total, past and future, for the office hours? Well, I got about 75 different. Some go to the same country. One of the things that I've been wanting to do lately is I've been post COVID, I've been changing sort of my travel patterns, and I'm going to try to go places I haven't gone before, which is kind of cool. And hey, I got to move this so I don't see it. Let's just minimize that. Yeah, there we go. And so I'm going to try to go places I've never been before. Like, I've never been to South America. I've been to Mexico, but again, that was business that got me there. I actually am going to send a note to all the classes. I'm going to end up on vacation next week in Portugal, and so I'm going to try to. And I've never been to Portugal, and so I'm going to try to meet some students from Portugal one day this week and next week. So yeah, 70 of them. I'm going to try to diversify. I want to go to Greece. I want to go, places I just haven't been. Just try to make that more interesting. Yeah, getting an expert gets a direct, quick result, but GPT and other LLMs give us hints. Yeah, I think that we need to learn how to use LLMs. This notion of conversation and the fact that they understand you in ways that Google currently doesn't that's the most impressive feature of it all. Branislav says, hello, Dr. Chuck. Will you include Django REST framework in your DJ4E course? Branislav, that's a great question. So the answer is not in that Django course. The problem with that is that Django course uses like server-based rendering and simple Ajax-y stuff, and it's trying to get through. I have this problem where, yes, it'd be great to talk about the Django REST framework, but then if that had increased it by 20%, then people couldn't finish it. And so one of the things I've been dreaming of is another Django class, not to replace that Django class. Think of that as the Django server-side rendering, kind of the traditional classic request response cycle, model view controller, classic. But instead, have a whole nother Django class, which is like a follow-on Django class, sort of building single-page web apps in Django. And then the Django REST framework would be front and center. It'd be 50% of the class, because then you would be doing, progressive web apps. You'd be doing, JavaScript and Ajax-y things and JSON-y things and all that stuff. And then you would build, the server side would be nothing but REST web services. So it's hard for me to take a class that really isn't about REST web services and it isn't about front ends in JavaScript, and then add those things to it, because it's already, Django for Everybody is already too hard of a course. People get stuck in that course, and so I want to build it. And the cool thing about it is the way I build more courses is I build them on campus, and so I teach a Django class every semester at the University of Michigan. And one of these semesters, I'm just going to say, heck with it. I'm going to start from scratch and make a whole new Django class. And then after I've done that a couple of semesters, then I'll try to turn that into a Coursera course, because that's how I build all these courses, is I build them first. So, Django, advanced JavaScript, that course will have a bunch more JavaScript in it and a bunch of REST framework, and it won't have any Django template, right? I'm just not going to do Django template at all. And again, DJ4E is a classic old school web application. So model view controller and Django template is essential to it. So Vasmi says, can we take GenAI as a future career? I don't know. I just don't know. I think people are getting jobs in GenAI right now, no question about it. I think that organizations feel like they need some help. The interesting thing is that as I work at the University of Michigan School of Information and teach our students and get to know them and watch them as they graduate and watch how they progress after they graduate, a lot of them are getting GenAI jobs, and we didn't do a very good job just because it happened so fast. We don't have a curriculum that's GenAI. But students are, it's easy enough for a talented student who's been well trained in other things like databases and Python and whatever to just kind of like figure out Gen AI. They're like, oh, and I made a model last week. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, I just did it. It's pretty easy. And so, I think the key thing is the key question is that if all you know is Gen AI, will that be a good choice in a career? And I think the answer is probably not. I think that if you're like, the only thing I know how to do is Gen AI, I think you won't be all that useful to your organizations. They might hire you and they're like, wait a sec, you don't even know how to do databases? Like, you got to hook Gen AI up to our database. You didn't learn databases when you were in school? Like, no, I just learned Gen AI. And the answer is, I think that's a little dangerous. And so you'll notice that if you go to online.drchuck.com, you'll notice that I don't have any Gen AI courses. If you go on my Coursera stuff, I don't have any Gen AI courses. The School of Information, Chris Brooks and others have lots of Gen AI courses. And the ironic thing is Chris put out a course, like in March or April or something called Llama. And, he rushed to get it out. And then as soon as the course came out on Coursera, Llama revised a whole new revision. So one of the things that I do is I don't like building courses that have a short shelf life. And so I will leave Gen AI courses to other people who are more committed to the idea than me. So I will probably not do a Gen AI course. I will teach you all the things that you will need to know, like C programming for everybody and Postgres for everybody, Django for everybody, Python for everybody. I will teach you the things to know so that you can do great in a Gen AI course, right? And as Gen AI moves, you can move too. So I don't want to teach you the Gen AI because I think that has short shelf life because, it's just going to change. We're going to use it in different ways. We're going to learn more about it. How it's going to work in software, it's going to be different. And so, yeah. The mechanic. That was a great presentation, Dr. Chuck. I enjoyed it. My question to you this morning from Virginia is, what do you think the future of car repair will be like? That's a good question, because part of the fun, even though it's a lot of work, is preparing these cars, right? You saw some of the pictures of us tearing interiors out, and we carefully don't screw up the wiring, and we do all this stuff, and I just think about, like, what if there was a Tesla and I was tearing the interior out of a Tesla, but it doesn't even have like a door handle that opens without a computer. The problem with any of these cars is if anything goes wrong with them, they're all broken. You just like, and so so for me, I think the future of mechanics in cars is going to be much more repair and replace large components. Hey Martin, I've seen you a lot. And greetings from Uruguay. So I look at it as I'm so glad that I'm working on circa 2005 cars. Most cars until recently, you had an ECU, and ECUs are fine. They are simple, crude electronic devices that are rugged, and they are conservative. They've been designed for a rough and tumble environment, and so they don't freak out when one sensor goes away. They go into like limp mode or something. So the concept of like, chaos monkey inside of a engine ECU is they built them to assume things are going to be weird and a sensor would lose a wire. But the most modern cars, like, if it doesn't, it has a camera to decide if you're going to close the door and hit your own leg, but it won't run the car if it doesn't have that camera. I mean, how do you fix that? You just go in and pray to the gods at the dealership and hope that they can figure out all those sensors that are stopping your car. And so I don't know. I mean, for me, I look at a car like a Ariel Atom that you build from scratch and just drop an engine in, and You don't have all these electronic sensors for doors and stuff. So the idea of a modern car turning it into a race car, I think that's going to get harder and harder over time. So we're just going to have purpose-built race cars. And I think we'll get some cool electric ones then too. And then we'll get some cool purpose-built electric cars. And they will have just parts. They'll be replaceable parts. You'll be able to pull it all apart and work on it and figure it all out. So that's my theory on the future of race cars. So yeah, I think EVs are just a given. I mean, and I think if we come back in 20 years, I'll be talking about racing some hacked up EV, and the parts will be understood. I would say the way I like to think about EVs and the future of EVs is think about the Toyota Prius. When the Prius first came out, everyone's like, this is like mystical technology from Star Wars, and no one will ever be able to work on a Toyota Prius, and a battery will go bad and have to throw the car away. Well, Priuses have been around a long time. Not only do your average auto mechanics know how to fix Priuses, but there's a million YouTube videos about people fixing their own batteries. Like, they're like, oh, just go in here and open that up, pull the battery out. Make sure you wear gloves at this point because you'll get electrocuted, or whatever. And so you pull the battery out and they're like, oh, there's 27 batteries, and figure out the one that's bad and fix it. And then you go on eBay and there's like, people will ship you battery parts for Priuses. And so I look at it as when we get to electric cars, 20 years after they're here, people will have used parts for those cars on eBay, and we'll just get them, and you'll be able to like rip panels off, unscrew a thing, put it back in. And I think by the time we're done with all that, I think in some ways it'll be easier to keep an EV running as a race car than a regular car, because there's just a lot of mystery in it. And I just think the complexity of the EV powertrain is less than the complexity of a regular powertrain. Pranab, any updates on the hardware for anybody? So I've got someone working on a breadboard JavaScript application. I promised myself that this summer I wouldn't tempt myself by working on the hardware for everybody 24 hours a day the way I did C programming for everybody. So I'm just holding that back. I'm letting some other people work on some stuff. So I'm going to at least get myself to fall before I start playing with that. But I think that the hardware for everybody course will go quickly once I get some auto grader technology in place. So Mario says, hi, Dr. Chuck. I haven't used Kubernetes due to time constraints. What other technology should I consider for developing endpoints to receive offense from our last mile carriers for 500 daily packages? So yeah, I made fun of Kubernetes. I hate Kubernetes. I barely tolerate Docker. So for me, the only way to build a reliable, scalable online system is Amazon. And I don't like Microsoft, and I don't like Google. Amazon gives you the things that make your life easier. So you have to look at various Amazon servers. I'm not yet a fan of Lambdas, but things like serverless databases and auto scaling groups and application load balancers. I like to build things that I can understand how they fit together. And the problem I have with Kubernetes is it just seems like it's really not good at scaling. It's fine for development, but it's not good at scaling. So if you're going to build a real thing, and Amazon has services like a messaging service, an email service, a serverless database server. And so the key thing is if you're a small company, you can look at Amazon. You might end up with I don't know what my Amazon bill is per year. It's like over $1,000 a month for sure. But it makes my life easy. I support like 25 or 30 servers, small, medium, some, Ferarri is one of the servers I support. But I can lean on Amazon. And so yeah, I'm paying, let's just say $18,000 a year to Amazon. I also am not paying a $200,000 employee to make it work on Google, right? So you might say, oh, it's $18,000 a year on Amazon, and it'd be $12,000 a year on Google. because you're using this low-level stuff. And then I hire a $200,000 a year person to save 18 to 12. And so I just have tried a lot of different things. Kubernetes was one of them. And by the time I got what I wanted to happen inside Kubernetes, I'm like, I'll just go back to Amazon. And I don't like the fact that Amazon is kind of proprietary. And I'd like the fact that Kubernetes is open source. But if it makes my life miserable and I got to hire a $200,000 programmer, then I don't care. I just like, okay, that's the compromise. It's like my Apple phone. Do I like the fact that this is completely, proprietary? Not exactly. But you know what? I need to make phone calls. I don't need to make a political statement by the phone that I have. And so the same is true for my hosting environment. I used DigitalOcean for little one-offs because it's kind of cute. And I use Amazon for anything that needs to be scalable production. So, and hey, War Wheels, the latest card no longer has air conditioning. It got torn out, so we only have defrost, no air conditioning. Presentation. Wow, we need some more. I have a question regarding math and programming. What is the correlations between a lot of mathematicians becoming programming? I find this very often, especially with the old generation. So, you re-asked that question. I'll get to it. So, math and programming. So, I have a love-hate relationship with math. I think that math features so strongly in our culture and our curriculums because if you go back 70 years, it was the only way to measure a young human being's ability to think in an abstract way. And what do I mean by that? Well, abstraction means that you can imagine something complex when given something simple. I'll give you an example from my next talk, which is going to be about airplanes. One of the things you do when you fly instruments in an airplane is you got these instruments and they got indicators and dials and this kind of thing and that kind of thing, how fast you're going, what your attitude is, and how if you're turning or not. And so you're looking at these very simple pieces of information, and what you have to do is you have to think abstractly and kind of imagine what that means. Where, is your airplane like this, or is your airplane going down? Is it going this way or that way? And all you got is like little needles and dials. So you got to build an approximate model of the real world from just some very limited information. And so that's part of intellect, right? That's something that we humans can do that no other creature on the planet can do, and that is to take relatively limited data, abstract from that data, and make much larger conclusions, right? We just look up at the sky and you see planets moving back and forth, and Copernicus said, hey, I think those are going in ellipses. Turns out Copernicus is right, okay? And so clearly we value abstract thinking in terms of when you're going to do work and be employed in things that test your mind. And there are smarter people and not so smart people. There are people who have just like more capable minds than others. And how do we measure the capability of a mind? And so math has been this convenient thing because it's so absolutely abstract and almost pointless. Abstract to the point of being pointless. Like how many people have done a surface integral in their life? Right? That's like Calc 2 or Calc 3. And so you say, like, why do we teach all these people surface integrals and give them exams on surface integrals and then give them a grade in surface integrals, and based on their grade on surface integrals, let them into Princeton or University of Michigan based on that grade? And the answer is we need some way to measure your ability to think about things that are not just like sitting in front of you. And so what happened is when computers came along, you kind of knew that to program well, you needed good abstract thinking. And so it was a convenient thing to say you have to take a bunch of math before you can start to program. And it was an approximation to who is suitable to learning programming. It's to say you're not suitable to learn programming unless you can learn math. The problem is the time for that convenience is long past, meaning that it's way easier to learn to program than it is to learn math. And frankly, I think it should be flipped. I think you should just teach young people programming. And then when you start teaching calculus, you should use Python. I know that I understood calculus and did okay in it, but like matrix stuff, I didn't get it. I wasn't good at it. Statistics, I'm not good at it. I think I would be better set up to learn statistics or matrices if it was taught to me using the abstraction of code to explain what's going on in matrices or probabilities, to make them real to me, to make it so I can, if I need to know statistics, well, and you want to teach me statistics, well, let's teach me programming first. And so when you talk about mathematicians becoming programmers, it's actually quite natural, because if you're successful at math, and not all people are, but if you are successful at math, you're going to be successful at programming. But if you're successful at music, you can also be successful at programming, right? If you're successful at the study of the technical study of music, and you really understand chord progressions and 12-bar blues and the theories behind it and frequencies, and if you study it thoroughly, and again, you're taking this music, which is just like a sound that we like, and you're getting all abstract about it. So there's a lot of music majors that end up in programming. I was a biology major. You say, like, what does that have to do with anything? And the answer is, oh no, biology is very structured and abstract, and there's like genuses and species, and there's taxonomies, and so when I learned biology, I was trying. My brain craved something about organization, and then I met computers, and I'm like, oh, I like this better than biology. And so that's where I think the math to computers things happens, which it's a great preparation. I think the mistake we make is that it's the only preparation when we build curricula. Can you please go over the row equals cur.fetch1 in the worked example? Counting email in the database. Hopefully I will get it. Let's think of how to do this. Yeah, music and programming. So let's talk about cur equals fetch1. The key thing is, what is cur? Let me find the book. Let me find the book. I think I got a pretty good. No, I don't want to buy the book. I just wanted an HTML. Okay, let me switch here. Put it over there. Boom. Okay. So this is the book in the database. So the key thing in that cur fetch one bit is, what is cur? And cur is a cursor. Now why we call it cursor? I don't know why we call it cursor. The key thing to the cursor, it's like a file handle. So if you open a file and it has a terabyte of data in it, the file handle does not have itself a terabyte of data in it. You can repeatedly ask the file handle for the next line, and you can do that a billion times and you will get through the whole file. but the file handle itself does not store the data. And so the cursor is the same for the results of a query, right? And so the key thing is if you run a select statement into a database that has 100,000 records in it, and your select will produce 100,000 records. If you were to time what happens the moment it does the select, that's like 100th of a second, even if it's 1,000,000 records. And what you get back then is a cursor. The cursor doesn't contain the data, but if repeatedly queried, you can get the data eventually. And so the cursor is like, it's just I think, did I use the porthole? It's like you can only see the data through a little thing. There's a giant data, but you got this little tiny thing, but you can say, give me the next one, and then the next one comes through. And so it has to do with the fact that if you made it so that you ran a select that was going to give you 100,000 records, you'd run your computer out of memory. Like, and that's what the fetch all is. Like, let's select star from user. Fetch all. It'll give it to you. But if your computer runs out of memory, it will. And it might take you 2 minutes to get all that data. It might be a lot of data. And so the fetch one says, we're going to do that over and over, and it's just like doing a read or whatever on a file. Allows you to access all the data, but not have the data stuck in the memory of your computer. So these are all, but like, let's do the select. Where's the select? Yeah, right there. So this is the essence of it. Well, cur equals fetch one is kind of having this, right? So this is going through repeatedly. There might be 1 billion rows here, and this loop will run 1 billion times, but you're not going to run your computer out of memory. Whereas if you pulled all 1 billion records in, like into a string or a list or something like that, you'd run your computer out of memory. So that's what the fetch one is to do. Let's see if we got any other good examples to look at. Insert, join. Wow, I'm talking about joins and stuff. Right. So there we go. We're doing a cur fetch one. Now that one there's only one that I'm going to get. So I'm going to look up the primary key for a particular artist name. Yeah, it's the map one that you're talking about. Do I have that convenient somewhere? Yeah, I don't have that convenient somewhere. I don't know where the map example is. No, let's see if I can find it. Code 3. COD 3. Geodata. Let's see if that's it. I should be checking. I'm watching the. Okay, I'm going to move over here so I can see the chat. Where's the chat at? Restart chat. Okay. There we go. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm getting Hey Mechanic. I don't know if I'm getting it right, but I think I might be close to it, right? Cur fetch one. So you can see that this is in a loop. Well, select from where address, that's looking up one thing. Okay, let's look at geodump.py. Geodump.py, here we go. Now you see it. We're going to do a select star from locations, and then we're going to loop through here for row and cur, and we're going to get it one at a time. And so fetch one is just a way to grab one thing at a time from a cursor. So I don't know if I got that right or not. So let's go back to pop-out chat again. There it is. Okay, back we go. So let's see. Yeah, Barun, you're saying, yeah, even Linus Torvalds agrees with it, as he said something like, you choose the best product regardless of type open source software. Yeah, some people just get so purist about it that they can't get they can't get out of their own way. But that's because they probably don't have any work to do. They can just stand around and protest. RTB, this is a great question. RTB says, which programming language should I prepare for so it will actually be useful after 2 years in AI time? And the answer is, you should use a language that's been around a long time, because the longer something's been around, the longer it's going to be around. So if a language was invented yesterday, it may be the coolest thing ever, and everyone might be all excited about it, and all the influencers might be writing "Hello World" in it. But the reality is the languages of the future are the languages of the past, and all these other new languages just inform us. And then the other languages get better and better. And so my answer is, learn Python, learn C, learn JavaScript, learn Java, maybe learn C#. These are all the classics. I mean, you just study the classics, and that is the foundation. And if you know those 5 programming languages and you walk into a job that does Rust, 2 weeks later you'll be a wizard at Rust. We cannot teach you in your education everything you're ever going to see in your career. We can only teach you in your education enough so that we are confident that whatever you see in your career, you're going to be fine. And so we got to cover the basics and cover them well and prepare you to learn in a hurry. And so, that's why the C class is like, I'm so in love with my C class, because that will give you value through a 30-year career. Everything you get out of the C class will be valuable to your whole career. And you will not write any C. I hope you don't. That's not a very good use of your time. But your understanding of C will be tremendously valuable, because you understand, C teaches you how limited computers really are. So, yeah. Okay. A quick sort and index binary search is really the fastest algorithm for the database relational. Well, that's a tough question. Your basic log n stuff, which is trees, which scales as log, in general, yes, except hash, right? And so hashing has the potential to be order 1 rather than order log n. So that's why hashing is so important to, say, Python dictionaries. The problem with hashing is that in order to keep the performance up in hashing, you've got to do a lot of maintenance and potentially waste space. And so hashes are better than tree-based algorithms in certain situations, but you're sitting in a database and you're like, oh, do this, and the answer is, okay, we'll just keep using trees because trees are really good. And so there's all kinds of clever ways of doing indexing that are like better than trees, and they are really better than trees in their specific situations, but trees aren't obsolete. And if all you do is trees, like in a database situation, you'll be fine, because they're so good at it and they're so fast at it that like a hash or other kind of things, there's kind of indexes where, like, if you're looking at like, say you're putting log entries into a database table, and it's really, the key is the time and it's going up. There are some fancy ways to index that are kind of better than trees, because trees are like, oh, I can handle any random series of numbers, but if they keep going up, there are better ways to do that. So the Argonaut I've been stuck on the same problem for over a month. Yeah, I don't like C++ for beginners, because C++ is both trying to be high level and low level at the same time. So the Argonaut, what problem are you working on in the C class? Let's see if we can figure it out. Which problem? Let's go to C programming for everybody. Are you still there? I should do more of these things. What I should do is I should have a form. Exercise 3-4. Okay. 3-4. Let's go take a look. Not that one. Binary. Let's log in. Let's go to hex and binary conversions. Okay. Write a function I to b which converts an unsigned integer into a binary base 2 character representation in is and then write I to h and make sure you can use reverse s to reverse a string. Make sure you pass a character array and string constant to reverse. Okay. Okay, well, let's do it. That's the instructor solution down there. I'm not going to do that. Okay. So, so we got n. So I'm going to just say printf hello %d \n, comma n. Okay. Oh, it's not going to let me. Okay, so I got my print statement coming out. Hello 42. Okay, so here's the thing. The way that you are going to convert to base 2, right? Because we got to understand what base 2 is. If you don't understand base 2, that's a different problem. So that's the 1's position, the 2's position, 4, 8, 16, 32. So 42 is 32 plus 8 plus 2. So if you don't know what base 2 is, then this is a really hard problem to solve, okay? And so the key thing is there's a couple of ways to go about this, okay? And so we're going to repeatedly divide this by 2. So make a while So I'm going to go through and I'm going to, let's see. So I'm going to take m equals n modulo 2. N equals O as n divided by 2. Actually, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to put a print statement in here. I'm going to take the modulo of 2, which is going to grab this last number. So it's making it whatever n is, what is the remainder when divided by 2? I'm going to say printf %d, 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 comma, n, comma, m, comma, b. So the number, the modulo, and then let's call it, I'm going to call that b d2. So I know that that's the thing when I divided by 2. I'm going to call this guy d2. And then after the print statement, I want to see this progressing. I'm going to say n equals d2. Because eventually, not minus equals d2. So n equals d2. So we're going to grab this digit right here, the 0, because 42 is the modulo of 2. 42 modulo 2 is 0. And then we're going to divide 42 by 2. So that's going to be 21. So we're going to watch this. There's going to be a whole bunch of crap, but it's all going to happen here in the beginning. So let's just see if I got this right. Yay! So now what we do is n is 42. 42 modulo 2 is 0. 21 is divided by 2. And then the next n through the iteration is 21. Modulo 2 is 1. And then 10 is 21 divided by 2 as an integer division with truncation. That's what's going on. And it does this over and over and over again. So the answer 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0 is, if we can just read these backwards, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. Okay? So now we can assume that there is enough space in S. Yikes! We can assume that there's enough space in S to do this. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say I equals 0. So I'm going to have I running through S. And I'm going to say S sub I equals the n character / 0. So it's going to start with S having nothing, because S is kind of our return value here. Okay, and then I'm gonna, let's do this. Add a %s here. And then what I'm going to do is, let's see. Now I need to convert that to a digit. Oh boy. So now what I want to do is I want to say S sub I equals, I have to go look at my solution. I will look at my solution afterwards. So I really want to say S sub I equals the character 0. Okay? So S sub I, it'd be too easy to say S sub I equals M. Right? So that I want this 0 to be in my string, and I want to accumulate these little guys. But that's not what I want. So I am going to, and feel free in the chat if this freaks you out, so I'm going to add m, which is a number like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, an actual integer. But then there's the character value of 0. So if that m is 1, then that's going to be the character value of 1. And then I'm going to say I equals I plus 1. And then I'm going to terminate that and say s sub I. Oops. So I just put a character in. So I'm going to take the next character after I increment I equals \0. I'm watching the chat, so you can always challenge me in the chat. So now we're going to be accumulating the digits as characters. So that's digits as characters. So let's see what happens when that runs. Yeah. So in the first time, it's nothing. 49. Something's not quite right. Oh, maybe. No, it is. It is okay. So actually, I want to print it after I've updated S. So I want to see the accumulation of, so I was missing in this accumulation over here. I'm missing the, okay, now I got 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. So I'm accumulating at the end of the string. So these are going to the end of the string. So I'm at the end of this, right? So I'm at the end of this while loop, and I've got a well-formed string. Okay, I got a well-formed string here, except it's backwards. And then I can call reverse. Never forget C. Then I'm going to call reverse S. I love writing C. Okay, so let's run this again. See? So I have it. So I'm hacking the low digits off, end up with 0, 1, 0, 1, and then I return that. Okay? So now I can just get rid of all my print statements. Terry, I'll get to your question. Okay. So all my base 2s are right. See? Base 2, base 2, base 2. Okay? So, yeah. Yeah, so Pranav, you're going to see in a second now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to make it for the hex. And the reason I did this, hex is going to be trickier, but let's just say I want to do this in base 8. I just have to change that 2 and that 2 to an 8. It's not going to be base 16, it's going to be base 8. I'll show you how to do base 16 in a second. But by this little pattern here, I can do more than one base. I could do base 5 because it's repeated division. So my base 16 is still wrong because I'm doing base 8. This is wrong. That's 42 in base 8 is 52. 254 in base 8 is 376. So you'd think, oh, great, I can just make this be 16 and do a repeated division in modulo. And this is going to blow up badly. Probably going to blow up horribly. Yeah. So it's 2 colon. It's 3 semicolon. And it's 64, that's right. And it's question mark less than. The problem is, if I look at the ASCII chart, make it bigger ASCII chart, people. If you look at where the 0 is in ASCII, come on, where's 0? Okay, so 0 is 30 hex or 48. So we're getting a number after that division in modulo of 0 through 16, which means if it's 9, up to 9, we're going to actually get the character 0 through 9. But if it's 10, we're going to get colon. If it's 11, we're going to get semicolon, less than, and equal. And we're going to get numbers all the way up through 16. So we're going to see the characters colon, semicolon, less than, equal, greater than, question mark. Now, if the world could just accept the fact that, question mark is, 15, that'd be fine. And then, but now what I'm going to do for base 16, and Pranav, you can share yours as well. I'm going to do char map equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. So I made myself a 16 character string, and I know these numbers are going to be from 0 through 15, and now what I can do is I can do S sub I is map sub M. So now I'm looking up the mth character in this, and when I get a number that's 10, it should come out as A. So let's try to run that. Doobie-doo. What did I do wrong? Oh, output match. I did it right. I didn't do it wrong. I kept looking for my output over here. Who wrote this damn autograder? It confuses me. But now I'm successful. So now you see how that FE came out? I just had to make a map. And as a matter of fact, I could cheat and do this in the map here. And the base 2 will work. Yeah, it worked. Okay. No, Pranav retracted his message. So the Argonaut. Yeah, so the Argonaut, yeah, I get where you're saying there. This is, as a good C programmer, the notion that you can do this, you just have to assume and trust that the calling thing gave you enough space, right? Because we're not doing dynamic memory here. We're being given an array as the place to return it. You just got to hope there's enough space, because this is dangerous code. And I'm not saying this is how it should be done, but this is the way that it was done in the book at that point in time. So, yeah. So I hope that helped, Argonaut. I hope that helped you get there. While we're here, you see, one of the things I get to see is the... yeah. So this is a more... yeah, see that one? It's doing the same thing. And it's only, see how it's doing it? So this is my solution to it. Because I put solutions in that I can copy and paste so I can test these damn things in a hurry. And so it's still using reverse. It's going I. It's taking that modulo 2 plus 0, right? It just turned that all into one thing, and an I++. And it uses a slash equal to 2 while. So yeah. But this and this are the same. It's just if I'm writing it, I find it difficult. And this is kind of in the style of Kernighan and Ritchie now. They love this kind of really succinct, tight crap, you know. So I tend not to write that. I mean, I would get this working, and then I might try to say, "Oh, wow, I can do this." And I guess I didn't need this, right? Well, I guess I could have this. This line 8 could also be down here at the bottom. But the problem is, I'm worried that you gotta. What if n was 0 and then you didn't terminate the string, and then reverse would blow up? So okay, so there you go. So Terry asks a great question. Go back. Terry asks a great question. Hi Chuck, what are your thoughts on the performance improvements made in Python 3.12? Do I offer any resources for building wheels? What's a wheel? Thanks in advance. I don't know what a wheel is. You'll have to tell me what a wheel is. Wheels. Okay, let's talk about Python 3.12. So interestingly, I don't know if you've seen the epilogue. Right, if you go to C Programming for Everybody and you see the epilogue, this is one of my proudest moments. So if you haven't seen this, this is like awesome. Like in February, when I finished C Programming for Everybody, I flew out and spent a day with Guido and asked him a bunch of questions about things. And so I've interviewed Guido a couple times now, and what sometimes is the most interesting thing is to figure out what it is that he is working on. And so it's not in any of these videos. It's just what we were talking about as I was setting up or as I was tearing down. I got to talk to him a little bit about the things that he's working on, and some of it is he like in Sakai. Sakai, the learning management system, I'm a lead contributor to that, founder of the project, but I work on a little tiny corner of it, right? I don't work on all of it. There's other people that know way more about the whole code base than me. I have this thing I'm like crazy passionate about. So you'll note that Guido stopped being the benevolent dictator for life. Guido has given up the direction of the language in many ways. Guido has given up things like the dictionary implementation. When I was asking him about the Python 3.7 dictionary implementation, he kind of had to go back in his mind and realize, who was it that did that? Because it wasn't him, right? And not that he didn't remember it, just like he is not central to everything that's going on inside Python. And so talking about the performance improvements in Python 3.12, the things he was talking about had to do with performance improvements. And they may not be exactly the ones that we saw in 3.12 because he might be a couple ahead. But part of what he was trying to do, the things he was talking about playing with inside of Python, were performance improvements. And the world is sadly, it's very competitive, right? So, and Guido doesn't always think about it this way, but there was a time he had to compete with Ruby, because Ruby could have taken Python out, because Ruby was a good language, had a few things right, a lot of things not right. And so certain things that happened in Python 3, I think, were because of Ruby. He doesn't agree with me on that. But I think that if he hadn't done the things they did in Python 3, which were done at some emotional cost to everybody, Ruby probably would have taken some of Python's market share. So I think they're looking at like, what is Rust going to do? And I think that the use case that everybody is sort of most worried about in language design and language development is kind of like the Amazon Lambda use case. And that is that you don't have any servers at all when you're idle. And a request comes in, And it's like, oh crap, we better put up a server. And so it just holds on to that request for like a half a second and then wakes up a server, because you give it the whatever code you want to start the server. And you give it the Python code. You don't necessarily give it the Linux code. You give it the Python code, because it may have Linux servers already running, and it wakes your Python code up. And the question is, from a complete idle state to responding to the first request, that time is a critical amount of time for any modern programming language, because it's getting pickier and pickier. Like in Java, which we use in Sakai, if you were to put Sakai in a Lambda, the time to first response would be 2.5 minutes, maybe. Not acceptable. So people are just not going to use Java for the kinds of things that need to scale, like whoosh. And so I think that languages like Rust right now, because they're kind of more like C, they tend to start up quicker. And you type Python in the command line, or you start Django, run server, and you're like, it's like, it seems so fast. It seems so fast. But in the competitive landscape of programming languages, the fact that it takes well under a second to start something, that's not enough. That's just not enough. And so the stuff that's happening in 3.12 and later, and the stuff that Guido was talking to me about that he's playing with, has to do with startup and adding resources rapidly. And so, we're all going to benefit from that, because the Python community is just like looking at Rust. And if Rust is a little tiny bit faster, then the Python people go back to the drawing board. Now, the problem with that, and the PHP language is doing the same thing right now, and that is they're looking at, like starting WordPress, or how much CPU WordPress takes, and can we change PHP to save resources there. And so sometimes they do things in these programming languages that change the nature of the language. That's annoying for those of us who've used the language for a while. So like the PHP 8.2 to 8.3 transition deprecated a bunch of things. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, I know why you're deprecating all that stuff and putting warning messages out, so my damn code starts having warning messages all over the place. You want me to use a version of your language that I'm leaning into your performance improvement needs. And so you got to be careful, and that's one of the problems of Python 3 was there's a lot of improvements, but then we had to rewrite our stuff, and so that's really kind of frustrating, because some of us might say, hey, Guido or Rasmus, just leave it alone. I mean, I don't want you to make my code. My code is fast enough already. I don't want 25% performance improvements if it means that I've got to rewrite code. And so, but unfortunately, if you don't do that as a language, if you don't improve, and even Java is working on this, they have a virtual machine that lets you go through all that startup cost of instantiating classes and this is and that's, and then like saving a snapshot of that so that you can sort of go like, whoosh, it's in and it's already running. Because all the runtime structures that are built dynamically are pre-built statically. And from what I understood from what Guido was talking to me when I went and visited him in February, he was talking about making it so that these runtime structures warm up and stay warm faster, having to do with reference counts and stuff like that. And then he talks always about, so like some company, I don't remember which one it was he was talking about, some company is done this hack, and wow, their startup times are really fast because of this hack. So I'm kind of trying to find how to pull that into the core code base. So performance is a big deal, and it can be annoying to us adopters. So Terry, yeah, okay. Wheels. Yeah, I don't know what a wheel is, but it makes it faster to compile from source. I don't know. Yeah, Prith, we were kind of discussing Lambda cold starts, right? That moment to first serve. So, yeah, it's competition that is going to hurt us a little bit to the extent that we've got to change our code a little bit to keep up, and they're going to force us to because they'll deprecate the old stuff. And if you're using Python 7.4, it's out of whatever. Like, you monsters, quit doing that to me. So, but it's just it. You don't. We have to invest a little bit in the movement. Now, Terry, were you talking? Have you heard about the removal of the GIL, the global interlock? Oh, yeah, Robert, I was. Yeah, no, so I wasn't really working with CMU. There were a lot of CMU people there. That was PyCon. I was at PyCon in Pittsburgh. By the way, I'm going to be at the Ohio PyCon. So if you're Ohio area, I'll be announcing something there. So we're going to take a bunch of people to the Ohio PyCon. And so, yeah. But if you were at the Pittsburgh U.S. PyCon about a month ago, there was this talk, and it had a really weird name. And I think it was a name where they were going to announce something that they couldn't put it in the title, so they had some other kind of weird title. But it was, whatever the title was, it worked because I don't go to too many talks, but I went to this one. And I'm like, and then they started talking, and at some point you're realizing that, like, they're talking about the global interlock, the GIL. So for those of you who don't know, the GIL has to do with threading. And so if you are inserting into a directory, sometimes it just like adds a thing and there's nothing there, or it has to extend a list, which means it's like changes this variable and extends all this stuff. If there were two threads trying to insert at the exact same place, they might make a copy of this and a copy of that, then replace it and do it, and all of a sudden you'll lose data. And so when you have many threads doing the same thing, there's a high likelihood of starting to lose data in data structures like lists and dictionaries. JavaScript has the same problem. And so the simplest solution is to basically say, we are only going to let one thread, period. And so Python has a thing called the global interlock. And it really slows Python down. If you're deploying a Django server, you have to like have Nginx and then make like 20 little baby Djangos. Like you have 20 copies of Django. But now you're starting to waste memory, because the Nginx can be multi-threaded and send the first one to the first Django and send the next one to the next Django, and it might take a little while, and then this Django is done, and then it starts sending stuff there. And Nginx can be dynamically told how many Djangos to run. So it cuts back, but if you got like 20 Djangos running, well, there's a bunch of stacks and runtime objects that are wasting memory, and they can't be paged out, because if they're paged out, then that's a startup problem again. And so the idea that you have one thread per Django, and that's why you need lots of little Djangos in a scalable Django environment, is a competitive disadvantage. And PHP can be multi-threaded. Java is beautifully multi-threaded, but it makes the language more complex because you got to synchronize things. And certain data structures are built to be synchronized. Certain data structures are not built to be synchronized. So 20 years ago, Guido chose to make this thing called the GIL, the global interlock. Like, okay, you don't get to do too many things multi-threaded. And there's this thing, like if you look at the recent Djangos, they're talking about WSGI and AGSI, the asynchronous gateway interface. Well, unfortunately, Python doesn't let you do multi-threaded. And the problem is every frickin' processor we have in this world has like 16 virtual CPUs. So Python can only use one of them. So that's not good. Java can use all of them today, right now. But it's harder to write Java code. So it has been a continuous like annoyance in the Python community for those who are questing toward performance that the GIL was just unnegotiable Guido. And so there's a bunch of people running Python that are not Guido anymore, and they have been creeping up to making the GIL optional. And I think the latest release, which might be 3.12, yeah, so it might be 3.12. It might be this GIL stuff. And some packages don't go. Some packages need work. They need to learn about the lack of the GIL, that there might be more than one thread running through that package. So you got two threads, they go a NumPy, and then within NumPy they blow up. And so what they're doing right now is they've got this thing where they can shut the GIL off. But it's like not, you got to recompile the Python itself to shut the GIL off. And that they do that so that you really know that you're playing with fire. And you can't just start whining and complain that I turned the GIL off and this thing doesn't work. And the answer is no, that thing doesn't work because it needs to be fixed. And so the key thing is Terry, you don't want to turn the GIL off if you want to do production. The turning the GIL off is so that you can, if you're the writer of a library, you can test to make sure your library works. So they talked about, and the funny thing was, at the closing session, the guy who was talking about the removal of the GIL is like one of the 5 lead, gods of current Python, and Guido is not one of the 5 leading gods of Python. Guido is like me in Sakai. I do standards in Sakai. It's my corner. I love it, and it's my thing. Guido does stuff. He just is not one of the gods. And so the gods, the council of the gods in Python, have decided to go after the GIL. And Guido has been fighting against the GIL because he knows it's hard, and he knows the complaints that you're seeing, Terry, are doing what they're going to do. And so I was in the talk where, I wish I remember what the guy's name was. He was doing it, and I'm just like, oh man, he is changing with the primal forces of nature if he's going to go after the GIL. And I just really liked the strategy, thought it was really well thought out. The GIL removal, by default, he says it will at least take 5 years. And he said, we're not going to do another Python 3. We're not going to make it so that it breaks too badly. We're not going to force you to break. And so the idea is the GIL is way off in this version. If you turn it on, you're on thin ice. You can't complain about anything. It's really for the testing of what it means for it to be off. And he had the talk, and you might be able to find that talk on the PyCon site and watch that talk because it was a tremendous talk. He was talking like the date time library, the thing that says what time is it or how many days since this whatever thing, that is not thread safe. There are just the profound parts of it that are not of the Python, even the Python library, let alone NumPy or Pandas, are not even close to thread safe. So like you turn the GIL off and date time will blow up if you're using it a lot. And so you got to be real careful with if you're talking about the GIL, that is, you talk about the GIL, the thing I'm happiest about was the commitment to not disturbing us. We people that are just trying to get our jobs done, just trying to use Python to do some work or write a Django app. There will be a time where the GIL will be off, and they might have certain because then first they got to get it working with like Python itself. Then they got to talk to Django people. The Django people it's going to break too. They've been doing AGSI for a while, but I think there's parts of the Django stuff that are still single-threaded, like the model stuff is still single-threaded. And there's a lot of cheating and optimization that people do that inadvertently cause stuff to be forced to be single-threaded. And I'm going to guess that like forms and models and Django are just dangerously not good for multi-threaded. And so yeah, but we got to go with them. We got to keep going, and we just have to make it so that we just have to hope they don't inadvertently break us. The problem with Python, the PHP 8.2 to 8.3 was done pretty quickly, but the problem was is they didn't give you a feature that you could turn on in the early version so that you could be compatible when the later version came. You ended up in situations where you pretty much had to have code that was ready for this version or ready for that version, which is like Python 2 to Python 3, which is not the best way to go. The PHP people could have done that better. And I think that the GIL work is going to be done very well if the conversations. And Guido went up and he was in the audience and he went up and he was asking questions of the people at the front of the room about the GIL, but not in a mean way. His questions were very thoughtful and very helpful, actually. So I don't think he's opposed to it. He just is like, I'm kind of glad that's not my problem to solve. So, okay. Well, I think it's 11:15. I went a little long on the my race car thing. So coming up next, a couple of things to talk about are I'll be at the PyCon Ohio. So if you're near Ohio and you come there, well, I'll be around. I'm not hard to find. And I'll send a note to all the Coursera classes like I always do. And I'll be racing July 11th and 12th-ish in Joliet. You're welcome to come to that. My next talk, which I'll do at least every 3 or 4 weeks, my next talk is going to be about flying airplanes. And so the title of my next talk is going to be Learning to Fly Again and Using GenAI as a Pilot. And it'll be like this, right? It'll be an example where I tried to use GenAI and it did some things well and it did some things badly. And again, I use all these as examples of I'm trying to understand this new creature that lives in our environment called GenAI. And so you got to try it, and then you got to reflect on what comes out of it. You can't just like, it's all over, GenAI is here. No, it's nowhere near like that. It's not at all like that. So that's why I bring GenAI up so much, is to just look at the joy of how smart it is and then sort of laugh at it when it's not smart. And I've got some pretty cool, I had a really cool example, even cooler than the car one I just did. That cool example of where GenAI both was brilliant and stupid at the same time. And again, I'm going to compare and contrast GenAI and Google. So with that, I think that I will sign off. And until next time, I've gotten now with the scheduling that I can put this stuff on stuff up on LinkedIn. I can schedule it on YouTube. I can schedule it on Twitter. And of course, I'll send email to the Coursera classes as well. So, hopefully I'll see you for the next one. Cheers.